Erwin Rode is the CEO of Rode & Associates and joins Full View now. Erwin, good evening to you and welcome. Thank you so much for your time. I think the key question here is, what does this mean for office owners and landlords? How are they going to make the case for renewing their leases and using their inventory?
Well, what happens in a shopping center when your tenant can't make ends meet for whatever reason and you still want to keep that tenant, what do? You renegotiate the rentals. And I'm afraid that office landlords and their managers will have to learn to renegotiate and to look reality in the face. And when it comes to renewal time, and maybe even earlier, if it's really serious, to renegotiate lower rentals. It's inevitable because the overhang is just growing and growing. The overhang was already there before the pandemic started. South Africa was already in a recession at the time, and the forecasts are that we're going to have very mediocre growth in this country for many years to come, for various reasons, which we can't discuss here now because we haven't got the time. So what does it mean? It means that office vacancies, unlike normal times, are not going to drop quickly. It's going to take many years because of the slow economic growth. And the implication is that landlords will have to think out of the box.
Yeah, and just take a breath there for me, because it's this out-of-the-box thinking that I want to really tap into, because this mixed-use model of remote and in-office working has resulted with many offices across South Africa, especially in commercial hubs, remaining half empty. So as landowners and landlords kind of rethink their future in this new paradigm, what are some of the ways they're going to have to employ this out-of-the-box or indeed out-of-office thinking that you're alluding to?
Yeah, well, as we all know, one of the options is to try and convert your office building to something else. But that's easier said than done, because it's very costly to convert an office building to, say, a block of flats, for arguments, as an example. I've just read in America there are instances where office buildings are converted to I can't even remember, but something completely different. So there are possible options, but it depends very much on the specifics, and it's very costly. Just think about it, the question of flats, how many bathrooms you all of a sudden need, and the plumbing and electricity and so on. It could be quite expensive. So that's not very easy. Another possibility, of course, is to institute co-working. In other words, you now become a landlord and you've got an open building with short-term tenants who come and go as they wish. They bring in their laptops and you offer them a receptionist and a telephone and fiber. And because more and more people are working like that, either they sit...
Yeah, so co-working.
In a restaurant and do their work there, or they go to your co-working office building and you offer them a cup of coffee and maybe something else as well.
And it's quite cool, actually, because I've a lot of people that I know, especially young people who are in multiple jobs and can't afford to be tied down by a particular office lease and not quite sure of the future of their ability to be able to hold one down, are looking at these co-working spaces. It can actually be quite a great networking opportunity. When you mention the US, I think the direction they're going in is converting those office buildings into apartments. So that obviously raises the issue around rezoning and so on. But I want to come back to Johannesburg, Sandton. We all know South Africa's main business node. Office vacancies there rose to a record almost 23% in the fourth quarter of last year, and that has risen steadily from 17% before the onset of the pandemic. And we've seen similar trends in Rosebank, in Randburg, Parktown and Rivonia. Same thing with Cape Town. Vacancy rates in the CBD and Century City also doubling. Is this likely to get worse?
It could. And the reason being that, well, my best guess, for what it's worth, nobody knows, but my best guess is that once the dust has settled and we got rid of this virus and it becomes a normal, say, flu, which is repeated year after year, and for which you get maybe an injection once a year, like for flu. Once that is settled down, what will happen is that my best guess is that between 10 and 20% of workers who previously were forced to come into the office will now work from home, either fully or partially. In other words, maybe you work 2 days at home and 3 days at work, or whatever the ratio is going to be. And that's got huge benefits for society in general, because our roads will now less clogged up. We will waste less money on fuel. You'll have more money rather than sitting and listening to a radio station that is not classical music, but a lot of nonsense. In Cape Town, we are lucky enough; we still have a classic music radio station for the time being. So it's got all these benefits, and it depends very much from person to person. I think most women, or many women, would like, married women would like to work from home, especially when you have kids that you've got to fetch from the creche or whatever.
Yeah.
In the case of men, we are all social beings, and there's a strong case to be made. Yes, we want to should go into work, maybe not every day, but quite often, because we need to interact and we need to build up relationships. And it also there's the question of training. It all depends very much on a specific job.
Yeah.
How good you can be trained, how well you can be trained online, yes or no.
Erwin, thank you so much for talking to us, and I've never met a problem that a good listening of Tchaikovsky's Four Seasons would not solve. So I endorse your classical music message. On the marriage issue and staying home, well, you and I are going to have a debate about that sometime soon. Thank you so much for talking to us this evening. Appreciate you. Rode & Associates CEO Erwin Rode.